So we're going to start the June 6th meeting of the Warrant Committee. We have on our agenda tonight, we're going to be talking about the Medfield State Hospital development. We've got some guests here with us, Trinity Financial, to give an overview presentation similar to what's been provided to the community. We'll have an opportunity to ask as many questions as we'd like. Also with us is the chair of the development committee, Todd, is here. After Trinity gives a presentation, Todd will offer some he has a presentation as well, but can skim through that and just kind of touch the high points as he sees fit or as our discussion and conversations take us. So this, is a lead up to the special town meeting that's been called for June 21st. As the Warrant Committee, it's our duty to make a recommendation to the town meeting on all warrant articles that go before the town meeting. So there will be a warrant article regarding the disposition of the Medfield State Hospital, and there'll be a warrant article regarding a zoning amendment for the Medfield State Hospital. We have a scheduled meeting for next Monday. It's my hope that by the end of next Monday, we have enough of, or all of our questions answered that we might be in a position to vote on a recommendation. Certainly, if we don't have, and members, please let me know if you don't have comfort or you need more information before that vote. Please let me know. So please ask as many questions as you can tonight, and then certainly in the next couple of days, I would ask that you please send me all of the questions or outstanding pieces of information that you may need, and I'll do my best to try to get those for us before our next meeting on Monday. So that would be kind of the goal. On Monday, we do have a couple visitors scheduled. We'll have Christian Carpenter, one of the Board of Water and Sewer members, will come and join us to have a meeting this week to discuss the peer review and the due diligence for the water and sewer and utilities. So Christian will join us to help us understand that, and we can ask questions. And Sarah Raposa, the town's planner, will also be with us next Monday to help with any questions we may have on the rezoning amendment. If there's anybody else that you folks think we should invite to one of our meetings, please let me know. At this point, I'm not aware of any organized group that's in opposition per se to the development. So there's not necessarily a group to invite along those lines. But if there are other members of the community that we think of value to have join us, more than happy to entertain that. So let me know after the meeting if that's the case, and I can try to schedule that for our next meeting as well. So there's been a lot of due diligence that's been undertaken and it is currently being undertaken. It's a great website that's being maintained by town staff that I keep sending you links to, that has a nice metrics and table of all the due diligence reports that have come in. And as the peer review from the town's peer review consultants come in, those are also posted. In addition to that, I've been trying to forward those along, all those things along when they're available. And I know there are several additional opportunities for the public to hear directly from Trinity Financial regarding the projects. Later this week, June 9th at 7 p.m. at the Public Safety Center facility, there's another additional public information listening session. That's in addition to the two previous listening sessions that Trinity held. So in any event, we have some guests here tonight. We'd like to welcome them forward to, oh wait, that's right. Thank you, Bob. That was we have two members participating remotely. Sharon and Jill, could you please announce yourself and mention that you're participating remotely?
Sharon Tadro, participating remotely.
Jill Rafter, participating remotely.
Oh, and Amanda has joined us now too.
Amanda Hall, participating remotely.
Sharon, what drawer is the chocolates in?
I know, sorry, I know, I should have brought delivery.
I feel like that's a fail on
She
me.
always brings chocolates.
I was gonna say, Christine, did they eat all of it that was in the kitchen?
Didn't stand a chance.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the reminder. So with that, we'll welcome Trinity forward.
Thank you. My name is Abby Goldenfarb. I'm with Trinity Financial. I'm joined by Amanda Alberta and Jim Keefe in the back row. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. We have spent the last month or so really getting to know a number of your groups in town. We've met with the seniors at the senior center. We had a lovely lunch with them before our public meeting on the 18th. We also met with members of the Norfolk Hunt Club, which was really fascinating, living in the city and then seeing the just hearing about their what they do and their rides was just incredible. We're meeting with the Charles River Watershed next week in the Medfield Energy Committee, and we're meeting with the Water and Sewer tomorrow night, and Representative Garlick as well. So it's just been wonderful being immersed in everything that your town has done for the project. You could go to the next page. Thank you. So what we have presented tonight, and please feel free to interrupt us and ask any questions, is just giving you a brief overview of the project if you're not already aware of that, giving you an update on our due diligence, and of course taking any feedback and questions you have.
Is the presentation available for the folks that are online?
Yes, that's an important one. Sorry.
Well, they could see it on the. Can they see it?
I didn't share the screen. That's
Oh, you haven't shared the screen.
Sorry, but
Okay.
I missed something.
Okay.
That works, yeah.
Yep.
Are we good? Okay. So just briefly, we'll walk through the proposed redevelopment program. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but just to bring you up to speed, what we are proposing to do at the State Hospital property is restore all of the contributing historic buildings on the core campus. I think many of you have heard us say when we first visited, we really fell in love with the buildings, and Jim actually just drove through there and came back all starry-eyed about just how beautiful it is. So what our plans are to do is restore all the contributing buildings. We are proposing 334 apartment homes. 75% of which will be market rate, 25% of which will be affordable up to 80% of area median income. There'll be a mix of studios, 1 and 2 and 3 bedrooms. What we'd really like to do is collaborate with the Cultural Alliance of Medfield. We're completely supportive of all of their efforts. We're amazed at the work that they've done to date, all of the events that they have there, and we just think it will be an incredible amenity for Medfield. So as part of our plan, we will be contributing and supporting this effort of theirs. Working with the town, we have always wanted to maintain the campus as open and accessible to residents. We understand what a role the hospital played in the history of the town, but also during the pandemic and letting people come up and use the grounds. We want people to cross through the campus and really be respectful as they would walking down the sidewalk of any neighborhood in Medfield. This has also helped in part because the town is maintaining some of the large open spaces, the green, the Northfield, and the Arboretum. So those are our overarching goals. This is the particular mix of the units. We have 45 studios, 155 one-bedrooms, 100 two-bedrooms, and 34 three-bedrooms. And the unit mix changed as we went through the due diligence and realized we could have more three-bedrooms on the property, and this would help with the town's subsidized housing inventory. That was a requirement, so we've made that adjustment. Distinctive features of the project. Again, our goal is to create housing that we would live in any of the units ourselves. We don't distinguish market rate from affordable. All of the same unit finishes will be in the buildings and in the different apartments. Really for us, it's about creating high quality housing. Again, we've worked on many developments where there's a lot of open space, and keeping it open to the public is important. And we will do that on this project as well. One of the things that we bring to this opportunity is we bring a team that we've worked with for many years, and we're happy to go into detail with them. But we've worked on some of our toughest historic rehabilitations with them and really been through situations. And one historic rehab where we had a building and we literally only had 3 exterior walls standing. And that's pretty scary when you know that in order for you to get the historic tax credits that are needed to make the project feasible, that you need to make sure those walls don't come down. And so this group of architects and engineers has been through a lot together and works well together. And we think that's important and should give you comfort. We've also have been through, many ups and downs of the economy. Haven't seen anything quite like this supply chain issue right now, but we are prepared to deal with challenges and recognize in our numbers the challenges that these buildings have in particular. They are going to be very expensive to rehabilitate. There's a lot of asbestos, there's structural challenges. And we'll get through that as we have done on other projects. This is just an overview of the site plan. As you can see, we really want to retain the arts focus center of the development. We're looking forward to collaborating with CAM, having events in the center of the campus. We're also talking to CAM about kind of future places they may look for new construction opportunities if that was desired. We're looking at activating the campuses ideally with public art, restoring the buildings, keeping a lot of that historic integrity of the buildings and the character of the buildings, yet bringing a modern, fresh approach where people will want to live there. Go to the next slide. We'll give you an update on our due diligence. This is what we've been doing for the past few months, really digging in deep. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen what's posted on the website. But first, we've been having a lot of conversations with the town about the gun range and a strategy for mitigating the noise that we think is problematic. We think it presents a risk for lease up and for financing. And so we're talking with the town about different ways to mitigate that noise. We're supportive of the gun range. It's really important to the state police and to the town. So it's just kind of managing the noise that we're going to work on. We've been in many conversations with CAM about the scope of work and their program, especially as the town decided to keep the Arboretum. We wanted to make sure we could get the same unit count and try to figure out to make sure this worked with CAM's future goals. We've also done an updated fiscal analysis with our consultant, Fougere Planning and Development. He's had many conversations with the school committee, I'm sorry, not the school superintendent, with the police and fire department, DPW. Those conversations are not concluded. I know we're still talking with the town about the DPW roads and maintenance, but those conversations have resulted in an updated fiscal impact report that we're still finalizing. We had a market study completed by Kenilworth Market Advisors. This gave us comfort that the rents that we were proposing in our pro forma were achievable, and that there was indeed demand for housing. Ascentec worked on a plan for gun range mitigation. As many of you can imagine, this is never something we thought we'd be working on, gun range mitigation, and not dealt with a gun range before, but it was really interesting to understand kind of different enclosures that could mitigate sound and how far those could work, and kind of figuring out that feasibility of that building. With Vertex, we went in and tested 4 sample buildings for lead paint, asbestos, and hazardous materials. The findings were consistent with what the town had found in its previous studies, and Vertex gave us some preliminary cost estimates. In our environmental assessment report, we worked with Ms. McPhail Associates, who's our licensed site professional, and they did a review of all the historic reports, different releases that had happened on the properties, and kind of highlighted areas that we'd want to pay attention to as the project moved forward. And with existing conditions, this is really cool. I don't know if any of you looked on the website or if the town has provided it yet, but they went through and did as-built surveys of all the buildings. So they went in and measured using lasers, and basically created like a Google Earth experience in every one of the buildings, so they could really figure out how deep the different rooms were, the dimensions, so that we could make sure what we were planning for units was really accurate. You know, our initial plans, we just looked at Google Maps and used kind of the footprints of the building, but this gave us exact dimensions. Oh, I thought we were done, but we did more. With Icon Architecture, we again updated our plans based on these existing conditions and more realistic understanding of the dimensions of the buildings. With VHB, we did an updated traffic study and a water and sewer capacity study as well. With Fort Point Associates, we reviewed all the existing permitting documents and created an updated list of all required federal, state, and local permits. With Public Archaeology Laboratory, we coordinated with the town officials on our compliance with the MOA. And we also submitted our Part 1 application. And this is basically an application you submit to the Mass Historical Commission, and then they submit one to the National Park Service to kind of verify that the buildings have historic significance, which we all know they do, but this is a necessary step in the process. And with Robinson and Cole, we worked on the provisional designation agreement, and we are now working on the the final land development agreement and land disposition agreement, and we've run title on the project. So a lot of work, and hopefully you've all been able to take a look at it. This is just a couple of images that our team has created. Sure.
Question on the due
Sure.
diligence. So, you know, a lot of these have been posted up on the website along with the town's peer review.
Right.
Is it several of those studies, the market study, environmental assessment, hazardous materials reports are still pending peer review?
Well, we're not actually planning to have those peer
Okay.
reviewed. We feel those relate more to their development budget and their ability to finance the project.
Mhm.
So they get to the pro forma. But we don't feel the need to have, you know, environmental firm,
Okay.
you know, review their studies.
So other than the updated fiscal impact analysis and that peer review, are there any outstanding due diligence requirements?
On the town side.
No, we have some numbers we're gonna run with Paragon Group, who's a technical assistance advisor to the development committee on the pro forma and the development budget. But that's, you know, within our control in terms of timing. There's no third party.
Okay.
So we have water and sewer, stormwater, traffic. And actually tomorrow, we're expecting fiscal impact analysis. So it'll be a complete set.
Super, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. This is an image we have kind of standing in the center street at the clubhouse, looking back upon what would be the art center. We envision this really as an activated neighborhood come to life, lighting, as we said, landscaping, art sculpture, public art sculpture. We really see this as an enhanced version of what you have now, a little more activated, not so scary or creepy. And, you know, we know there's a lot of history there, and we're really hoping to infuse this property with a spirit of wellness. We know, actually, I think it was John who said the other day, you know, it would be wonderful to pay homage to the people that have lived there, you know, spent their lives there, spent parts of their lives there. And we really feel like that's important. This place has history. We should recognize it. And we've even thought of some really wonderful ways to honor people who spent time there.
Can you do the, in the center there, there's that, there's two buildings. One is a real, it's like a, I don't know, the cafeteria, I think, for that. And are those buildings gonna be there? Are they gonna be?
So there's a portion of, I don't know if you can see this, 27B, which is kind of the new looking, unattractive, not historic looking structure. We're proposing removing that.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to clarify.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think, if you read closely, you can't see it from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be demolished. So this will be an opportunity for open space and landscaping. And at our meeting on May 18th, we actually got a lot of feedback from people on what they would like to see here from the town at that meeting. So that's something we're going to talk about at our meeting on Thursday. And again, these are just images at our meeting coming up on Thursday. We're getting the architects to kind of report back on the feedback they got and what folks in the town said they would like to see here. So we're really excited about that. This is one more view of walking down. You can see that I think that's a chapel far away on the left. And again, a place where Medfield residents can come and enjoy and just really see those buildings in a wonderful new light. So I think that is we do have more detailed information on the due diligence, if you'd like to hear that.
So when this is fully built, Trinity still has the offices on site.
Right.
And then they don't have to sell the property, or is there anything?
So typically with our historic rehabs, we have rehabilitated them and have owned them. Per the guidelines of the National Park Service, we have to maintain ownership for 5 years at least before we could ever sell it. That's something that we haven't contemplated yet, whether we would sell it at that point, but we're not precluded from selling it, but it's not something that we've typically done with our historic rehabs.
When you say sell, you mean to another institutional investor
Yeah.
as opposed to making condos up there?
You could do either one.
Yeah.
So we haven't typically done that, but it is an option that could be done. But you have to wait that 5-year period from the time you receive a certificate of occupancy.
So upon completion, Trinity would self-manage, probably have like community events.
We would have
coordination, and all that kind of stuff going on.
We would have a property
Active
management.
Okay.
We would have our property management firm or a third-party firm manage the property, probably our firm. And then, yeah, on-site staff, on-site leasing, property management.
What's the timetable? If the LDA hopefully will happen at the June 21st
Sure.
vote, and then how does
What happens next?
What's a rough time? frame?
Oh, that's great. So what we have envisioned is the special town meeting vote would be in June. Starting in July, we would begin really dig into design development. We'd finish kind of get going on more in-depth conceptual and then detailed design of the buildings. We'd also go do some more of our investigation right now. As I said, we did 4 hazardous materials review. We do it on every single building, deeply document and kind of walk through the plans of every building. That's where we need to get to, so we can submit all of the planning applications to the planning department and start to go through that process. And we've continued the major permitting that we've started with the Park Service. They're going to be looking for detailed information. What is the view? We actually have 27 separate applications to the Park Service. So they are going to want to see elevations of every side of those buildings, what they'll look like. And they would review kind of floor, roof plans of each of those buildings. So a very intensive design process. And then the goal would be to complete that work within a year, all of those permitting, and secure our financing and ideally start construction by March of 2024, if not sooner.
So in that summary, are there deal stoppers? I mean,
It's a great
you're
question.
selling this development to us in this context, right? As if we vote, it'll get done. But are there speed bumps that could turn out to be deal breakers?
Like another pandemic, a global.
No,
hit.
nothing like that.
That's what
No, I hear you.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen the land distribution agreement, okay, so I don't know what the terms are. It's been done in the context with the executive session of the select board. So
I mean-
my question is, as we go through here, it's all, and you see the due diligence. As I have seen each one of the due diligence reports and each one of them, it seems like, okay, we see it and we expected it and it's fine and we're doing this. My question is, the only one that I've heard so far is the gun site, okay? And it would seem to me that somehow we should be able to put some cylinder blocks around the gun site and do something. I don't know what it's gonna be, but that's the only one that's been raised. Are there others?
From our perspective, the gun site is a major,
Is it a showstopper?
it is.
Okay, but that's, so.
It
what
is.
is- Okay,
So
let's put that one down, gun stuff, but
Yeah.
what else?
You know, we like this, have this saying, we never give up. I mean, we're always concerned with every one of our projects. Construction costs are constantly rising. That's what keeps us up at night, trying to make the numbers work. We will get there and make the numbers work. You know, we need support from the state. These are going to be very expensive buildings to rehabilitate. So that's something that's always worries us. You know, if there's the environmental work that's still going on the laundry parcel next door, we need to make sure that's closed out and done in a way that's important. So in the LDA, you'll see certain hurdles that we have, or certain things that we have to bring to the table to deliver. And you'll see those outlined in the LDA. But the gun range is what we've identified as the major concern. And the town and the state have been great. We've entered into conversations, but you know, come June 22nd, we're going to be all over trying to figure out how do we make that mitigation come to life. So
Is there an anticipated time frame when, you know, we may be able to see the LDA as it stands? Is that ready to be released
We're working on it.
more publicly?
We're working on it. We're very close.
yeah, I think we're
This
down.
week?
Might it be before our next meeting Monday?
Maybe.
I mean, I don't personally, I don't see how we can vote until you see that.
I absolutely agree.
I would not.
We are trying to get it to you with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're down to a handful of issues. A couple of them are just creating appropriate, accurate maps of roads and things that will kind of outline responsibility for those, but I think we're close.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, and, just have a general conversation is, I agree 100%. We need to understand what the LDA is. That's what the vote is. And in that context, the gun range and other items such as that, so that we can understand as we present our view to the town, what can go wrong that will change this, so that people think at this point in time, we're voting on this great picture, great ideas. Oh, sorry, financing didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right, okay, we found more environmental issues than we anticipated. Or, hey, you're gonna have to pitch in something here. What are those contingencies? Those are the things that I think, from my perspective, we have to understand, consider, and then vote on.
My understanding is the process is that, assuming a positive town vote, that there's like a 2-year period.
Exactly.
Like the land doesn't transfer.
Exactly. It's not
until
our.
all the permitting process occurs.
Right.
Exactly.
So there could be things that come up in that permitting process.
Well, I understand that, and that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
I think that we, as we sit on the board of 8 people and are going into this piece, we need, at least I do, I need to be able to articulate to the folks in town, we're basically like a congressional committee, all right? Right, with all the stuff that goes with it, right? But all we do is recommend that you vote
Absolutely.
in one way or another, but then we each have a vote, right? But
Absolutely.
when people come to us from the Warrant Committee, their presumption is, right, that we've gone through enough and can at least inform them, right? And they'll, some will understand that it's a 2-year, we're not passing over titles, right?
Exactly.
But the expectation is, at the end of this process, we will, under these terms,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And then except for some things, and those are the things I'm except for.
The primary.
May I?
Sure.
Like every now and then, I get invited to these meetings, and I get the distinct feeling of being kicked upstairs. First of all, I think that, the gun range has been an issue from day one, particularly in this day and age. Because you've got a pastoral scene up there, and I was just up there and having characterized as being starry-eyed. I'm not often starry-eyed, but it's just a beautiful pastoral site. And the gun range clearly, again, today is a real issue, and it's going to repress the value of the property. And I think we've done some good work with the help from the town and Mass Development and more recently DCAM. I think that we feel good enough to believe that there's a solution there. The other, issues that come up, frankly, my biggest concern right now is getting a quorum on the 21st and getting 2/3 of the votes. I have to tell you that as much as everybody in town thinks this makes sense, it's going to be a really good big benefit for the town. It's going to do all this great stuff. The people that show up at town meetings, generally show up because, they want to say no. And we've got firsthand experience of this. And I'm a little terrified.
Yeah.
Sure. And I guess that's our biggest worry, because we have a fairly significant investment in this right now as it is. And the way we structured this was, okay, we're prepared to make that initial investment. We're prepared to take this up to the point where there's enough information out there that the town can reasonably get a grasp of what's ahead and decide to go forward. When we get that favorable vote, we're going to take off. We're going to take off. You know, in every real estate transaction, there's always surprises, little things that come up, little quirks that drive you crazy and keep us up at night. But I think in the 35 years that we've been in business, this is the kind of project we take on.
Mhm.
It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's got a lot of moving parts. And in this day and age, there are a lot more vanilla projects out there that 99% of developers would rather pursue rather than take on something like this. I've said from the beginning, this is a rescue mission. This is a rescue mission. We're gonna have to bring everything that we've been about the past 35 years, all the relationships we've had, and employ them in what we believe is a project that is extremely special, that we think we're gonna get the support that we need from the state, and we're gonna get a good response in the market. But I wouldn't jinx myself by saying we're not gonna have any bumps in the road, there aren't gonna be issues or whatever. That's just real estate, the unknowns.
Well, yeah, go ahead. In fairness, you know, it's the passion that comes and you know, and speaking with Todd and talking about your history and your capabilities, you know, I think that speaks for itself. But I think that from my perspective, I'm not trying to say nothing can go wrong. What I'm trying to say is if there are, you know, as you highlight the gun issue, and I think that's very important to be upfront on that. And, you know, without, you know, suggesting that you get 1,000 problems. I get that. You know, you wake up every morning, you get them all in your head and you deal with them and you can address them. My question was, is there another one like that that's saying, oh, this is the one, there's a time bomb or landmine over
I
there?
think again, I just put the site, and as Abby alluded to, we've taken on buildings that are in far tougher shape than these. These are actually in pretty good shape. That doesn't mean we're not gonna find rot or this or that, but I think in general, structurally, they're in pretty good shape. Now, every month that goes by, every year that goes by, every winter goes by, water starts creeping in and starts wreaking havoc, which is why, you know, we get that support, we're gonna take off. It's really important that we capture this opportunity now while the buildings are still in relatively good shape. And we're really, you know, I mean, again, I don't want to jinx it, but we wouldn't be this far in the process and have invested as much as we have if we weren't relatively confident that we're going to be able to pull this off. And whatever challenges, whatever low points there are, when that thing gets done, it's going to be spectacular. It is going to be absolutely spectacular. And whatever headaches, whatever sleepless nights that we had to endure, it will have been worth it.
Well, I think, you know, it's somehow in articulating that, as, you know, in this town meeting setting is very important. Because as I said, the passion comes through, but also the experience that you have. I mean, that's what when I sit back and look and go, you know, and to my perspective, having that experience and that knowledge, not that there won't be a problem, but it's that's your job to manage it because you see the opportunity.
And in so far as the fiscal needs study, we are in pretty good shape with that. We have a couple of items to work out, but when we first submitted our proposal, we showed you a positive effect, and more recently, where our consultant has met with department heads and in-depth discussions with police and fire and the schools. This is going to be a positive generator of revenue to the town, significant positive generator. And I think that where we are right now, and where peer review people are, is just making sure that we have all the I's dotted, all the T's. Everybody's thought of every angle of this, so someone doesn't raise their hand and ask a question, and suddenly, you know, we don't have an answer to that question. So a little bit extra time is going to be worth it to make sure that this is going to be something that would be entirely defensible by you and others at town.
Maybe is this where, you know, you've got the slides ready to go?
Yeah,
maybe
we
could
can
do
talk
sort of an
about
overview or
Sure.
hit the high points on the due diligence,
Sure.
including the
Yes.
fiscal impact.
Okay, so as we started saying before, there's a link that the town has to this group of documents where these are imagery that taken by drones within the buildings using lasers that has really allowed us to capture the dimensions of the buildings. There were a lot of places we couldn't get into just given the, structural integrity of the buildings, but these images were very helpful in our planning. So this is the work done by existing conditions. On the environmental and hazardous materials, we had our site assessment report, which you've seen. They've been to the site, they've reviewed the history and the records. There will be a soil management plan when we get into the construction, especially of roads. But one of the key things that came out of that documentation was making sure that the environmental work that the state is doing on the laundry gets done and documented, and that we be part of that process to understand kind of how that works. The hazardous materials survey, again, these are samples we did on 4 buildings. There is asbestos containing materials and lead-based paint in the property. That's not a surprise. I think what we're going to do once the town meeting vote happens is just understand, has any of the asbestos trickled out onto the ground outside the buildings? And if so, just making sure that our contractors will be aware of that and have a plan, and that we've built that into our costs. But again, nothing super surprising on this work. Water and sewer utilities. This is, we had VHB did this work. They found sufficient capacity for water and sewer. We're proposing new sewer lines be put in addition, an extension down Hospital Road to, I'm blanking on the Copper something road. So it's around a 1,200-foot offsite extension that we'll need to do as part of the project. But we're still working on the details of this, I think, with the town. We just saw today their peer review is either complete or in process. But we've had a lot of conversations with, and we're actually meeting with some water and sewer folks tomorrow afternoon. Traffic study, the team studied a number of intersections. The analysis was that the new traffic generated by the project will not significantly impact traffic operations in the study area. I think that whatever was anticipated in the master plan will be within. We are going to be making intersection improvements, that these were recommended in the master plan. So we felt like, the town is expecting these improvements at Harding Street and North Street, Harding Street at West Street, and Hospital Road at Harding Street. These are, I'm not a traffic engineer, but they're like triangular, strange conditions, and we're gonna make them more T. Yeah, make them more into a T.
Or maybe a roundabout, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
people are,
I'm sure
when you
they'll-
say roundabout, and it gets traffic engineers.
those 3 intersections were studied by the town's traffic engineer
Yes.
niche, correct?
Yes,
So
and
are-
those were in the recommendations.
I believe that was discussed at the prior select board meeting, and so those are the intersection improvements that you're carrying.
Those are
for
what we're
revision.
contemplating now. And I think we're still talking with I think that's something we're still working on in the LDA. I just got an email about that, so I haven't read the email, but if there are others, we'll take a look at that as well.
Those are good choices.
Can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
So maybe you haven't seen it, but the town had a study done of your
Yes,
traffic review, and there was a couple things in there that I wonder if you could talk to, or if not, you can get back to us, but one of the points in the town's peer review was, I think it was beta peer review, was the Belford Arts Center and the expected traffic
Yes.
from that facility was not factored into your study, I guess. And so I just wanted to make sure that if it's possible to sort of consider that, at least that's what the peer review is.
sure. So actually, what we had asked for is to assume that the Arts Center traffic, we actually corresponded with the Arts Center on expected traffic, and include it in, I think, the even if this project weren't to go forward, what would that traffic look like? So it is included in our study, just maybe not as part of the, I think it was part of the non-build, it was part of the background traffic.
Okay,
So,
I'm more interested in the future.
right, but it was included in there.
It was in the
We-
background traffic.
yeah.
And that
Okay.
the proposed
Yes.
traffic would have been additive, so it's included,
Yes,
if that's the case.
yes,
I was just reading the report. It says the Belforge Arts Center was noted to be a future use that would operate. Recommend the town consider the impacts of the Arts Center, which will likely overlap with peak opportunities of the residential uses, particularly during evening peak periods. So you're saying that the count, there was estimated traffic. And
Yep.
Just the result of that? I was
Yes,
why did they make that comment, I guess?
well, we wanted to make sure that the Belforge traffic wasn't considered part of our traffic. We wanted it to be already part of the future condition. So maybe they didn't read it correctly, but we definitely included the
So it's
Belforge.
out of that 2,200 vehicles per day.
It's, if you give me a minute, I can find exactly where it was, but I 100% included it.
Well, maybe we'll just go back to Beta and ask them, I guess, because
Yeah, we can get clarity on that.
they say, you know, right in here, it's number 5 in there. Yeah, it's
Okay.
a recommendation, actually,
Well,
so.
we will,
So as you talk about traffic, I think in anticipation of the town meeting, it's not clear what access will be at the site during construction. And, you know, I think it's been said, well, you know, we get the backfield is open, and, you know, where they talk about the overlook. You know, as we look at, or as I look at this and see the amount of construction, and I think you said it in the public sessions that you'll probably have 3 different contractors working simultaneously to meet the 27 buildings. Can we get some clarity on what and how people would have access to
during construction.
during construction outside of the campus? So I understand that the campus isn't there, but obviously you're gonna have to have access to the water tower, because that's, the town's gonna need that. And then there's the other site, but
I think,
people have a question on that.
I understand that. I think we could, I don't think today, I
No,
think
I'm not
this,
asking for today,
okay,
but I'm
we
just
will be
saying-
going through,
What we typically do is, and other communities require, I suspect the building department require, is a construction management plan. That's completed by our contractor. And what it is an agreement in terms of work hours, deliveries, lay down space, protecting the public, a whole range of issues that they will enter an agreement with. Again, I'm not sure that Medfield has this kind of procedure, but we're typically in situations where essentially all of those details are worked out by the people who are going to be doing the work. And the town gets to review it and make comments on it and approve it and make sure all the gaps are filled. But that's standard operating procedure.
Yeah, so I'm not looking for an answer
Yeah,
today,
it's-
but I'm just, I know that, and you already
Absolutely.
know too, you're shaking your head going, you will know, because it's, and people are
absolutely.
gonna say, well, you know, and their attention span, our attention span is very limited, right? So it's like, if it's gonna impact my dog walk in the next 2 years, I don't wanna do it, you know, and we just.
But certainly in a, you know, a high level format, that, you know, in general, these sorts of activities will
We
be
can- I can
continuous or
I can
partly
try to
interrupted.
get you as best of an answer I can get you right now without,
Well, actually, you know, what you've said already is, we're aware of it, you know, that there will be some access and there'll be some limitations, but we understand that there's open space and people are gonna wanna have access, and then it's a development.
Right.
Another factor, and maybe you're gonna say.
Well, no, I just wanted to clarify. So Bob, you're talking about public access to,
The areas outside
So-
of the
so
construction.
not, right, so let's, imagine,
So the north
construction
field.
fencing
Can
around.
I drive to the overlook
Right.
during construction?
Can I go to
Can I get to the
hospital?
back? Can I get to the back
That's
and walk my dogs in the open
Those are the
field?
questions. you have.
Okay.
Okay, so not within the perimeter of.
Yeah, no, outside of the construction, that's,
No, not that core camp.
Yeah, I
obviously
guess
We understand that's gonna be.
The question is, it also has to do with the timing and phasing of the road work that needs to be done. So to throw out an answer,
No, 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 I'm
yes,
not, I don't want to
Okay.
have an answer.
Right.
I'm just raising the question.
of
that-
course, absolutely.
I think the other thing is that we have committed to establish what we call a force account with the town, for the town to be able to employ somebody to basically represent the town now and from June 22nd through construction completion. So there will be someone at the town who will be involved in all our meetings, any kind of public impacts. They will be, right on board and totally involved. And there's dollars that we're setting aside in our budget for part of that.
But I mean,
Yeah, but-
and not to over, not to, okay, I'm probably overstating it, but the idea being is that, yes, we understand that people want to have access to space outside of the construction. And is that being considered and will that be considered?
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
at least a acknowledgement that you're aware of. the-
Absolutely,
of the-
absolutely.
Because there's a lot of dog walkers. in
Oh.
town.
I might bring my own dog
It's
to one.
beautiful.
Then a couple of-
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
It's a great
So
spot.
just that you're aware of it and you're, you will, obviously be concerned.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to
sensitive it.
expand the little access roads so people can do it, stuff like that, I mean, it's just, whatever, I'm not, I'm not solving the problem, sorry.
So we had the experience of building one of our buildings over the orange and green line superstation and by the TD Garden, where 15,000 passengers come in morning and night, and we had to keep that operational. Hopefully it's a
There's a
little,
few
less
cars in that.
complicated. But I think we have this experience, we're just not at the point where we can
Right.
detail
But
it, but we, of
people-
course, it's important.
People will be comforted
Yes.
if they know it's being considered. It's not like,
Absolutely.
Okay, I won't have access to do for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Traffic study. So I will get back to you on the question of the arts, but we absolutely included it. It's just where it shows up in the report. Proposed parking count. This has changed a little bit given the change in program, but what we are allowing for or kind of accommodating is 1.5 parking spaces for studios and 1 bedrooms, 2 parking spaces for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and then additional parking spaces for campus visitors. We're also kind of working through these numbers just to make sure they work, but they all fall within the zoning that's allowed, parking that's allowed, as well as I think there's like an additional kind of parking density that's allowed for the project.
Will each building have enough additional parking? Is it part of the 112? Is that scattered
Yeah,
throughout all of the
That's
buildings?
ideally, yes, so
So-
that a guest won't have to traverse the campus.
So what
That's
about
our goal.
What about the parking for the arts center?
So the
It's
Arts
not
Center
part of the
parking
112.
is not in our
That's not
parking
part of the
count.
112.
Yeah, it's outside of that, and that's part of the CAM's leased premises.
Yeah, it's not that big. It's a really not a huge parking space they have. but-
Right.
Okay.
What
And
is-
so can I don't know, this is unrelated to parking, but since you're on this slide, it triggered it in my mind. Do you happen to know the number of residents that a range at least that we could expect from this development?
Sure. We've had our architects estimate it, and then the fiscal analysis consultant is between 700 and 800. Now, those range from kids, that's on average, what we envision.
Okay, thank you.
So and along with the parking, and along with the proposed forecasted units, is this like the optimal mix for you of what the units would look like, or is that subject to change? And kind of what would be the driving factors of that change?
So this would be the most 3 bedrooms we would have. We would not exceed
exceed
this
that.
amount.
Okay.
I think our initial mix was a little heavier on 1 bedrooms, but this was supported by our market study, so we think it's in line. I mean, again, the surprises that could come up in this situation, now that we've had the buildings mapped, we feel comfortable in this unit mix, and
So this could go from forecasted to definitive, just as conditions exist right now.
yes,
Okay.
but we're not going to exceed the 330.
Right, but the mix,
Yeah.
just a mix of units. Yeah.
And just a comment, the LDA will cap the total number of apartments and the number of residents.
So it'll cap
It'll
just
it'll have a cap on 3 bedrooms.
just 3 bedrooms in total, not, yeah, so there's room to play with that other mix. Okay.
Yeah,
Right, but I know, some people would be concerned, okay, the developer gets started, if it's back, and it has to be 500, but they can't. Have
No, understood, yeah.
disagreement, it would have to be back to town meeting. So it's not like anybody wants to do
No.
town meeting twice, so.
No, this is just more like about business terms, kind of a question of like, okay, is this the optimal versus where is room to play with it? How does it affect the mixes of numbers?
okay. The fiscal impact to town, again, I'm not sure if this has been shared yet with the, okay. So this is projected total revenues based on the revised unit mix as well as projected excise taxes. These are estimates taken from the town's budget as far as police, fire, outreach, council on aging. Those are estimates taken from the town's budget and then confirmed. We had conversations with the police department and the fire department. And the DPW, I know we've been in a long conversation with the DPW about the roads and maintenance. The schools, given the increase in 3-bedroom units, and after conversations with the superintendent, we have increased the proposed cost or the estimated cost of schooling additional children. We initially estimated 47 to 67 school children. That estimate has grown given the increased 3 bedrooms to 61 to 66. And again, this is not on day one. This is as the building, as the project gains in occupancy. This is at stabilized occupancy. We also included costs such as additional special education costs, an additional bus route to serve the property, additional teacher costs as well. So these figures, we have reached, I think, agreement with the superintendent on these costs, and that's a really great thing when you're fiscal consultant and the superintendent are on the same page.
So it sounds
Question
like
on that.
there's some discussions going on regarding the disposition of the roadways in the future, the public-private and the maintenance responsibilities of the
Right.
town.
I think that's still ongoing, and maybe just regarding maintenance, I think is what's,
And what is your current, what is the current impact, fiscal impact assumed?
this assumes that the major, this assumes that the major outer loop is owned by the town.
Okay.
And that the inner loop and maintained by the town, and that the inner loop is maintained by Trinity, the roads and plowing. So that's kind of where we assumed. Am I right in that? I can't remember we've had so many iterations of this, but we're hoping to wrap up those conversations.
What's the time period that this represents, the annual net positive? fiscal?
I think this is at stabilization, so it would be 2 years after completion approximately, so 2028.
So that year, basically, it's estimating.
Representing both
These were
costs.
annual
That's
costs,
annual.
annual,
I
yes.
believe that he also added the 20% inflation factor on his cost.
Okay.
For
So I
this,
read that correctly.
I think for one of the school assumptions, there was a 20%
Right.
additional inflation to a 2018 number.
Right.
But I mean, I do have some questions on those school costs. They're really in the weeds though, so I'll talk to.
If you give me the
my-
questions, I can convey them.
Yeah.
We're happy to answer them.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was a little confused on that range, the how you came up with the $3,700 to $4,200 range.
I
was
think
trying
that
to
was
figure out
from
the arithmetic behind
the,
that.
That was, yeah, I have that detail. I mean, that was what was done in 2000.
yeah,
So that number came from what Martha did on the initial master.
yes, that was from the
Master plan.
2018
And,
Medfield.
And
master
so
plan.
I can talk to you about that. I've got some details on that, but, so, one of the things that I want to just make sure that the school department agrees with is that in that initial, I know you have two approaches to estimating costs here. One gives you a higher cost, one gives you a lower cost. But in one of those cost numbers that was done back in 2018, there was an assumption that there was some additional classroom space needed for the memorial school.
Mhm.
And now, of course, that was when we were at 300, they were forecasting at 300 school-age children development. So, yeah. So, but since then, we've we're right at capacity at Memorial. So I just want to make sure that they're comfortable that there's not a need for additional,
Right,
modular or some type of classroom space
yeah. 'Cause it's something that-
with this 66 number, you know what I mean? Because we have the Aura too, the Aura project,
Mhm.
which has a bunch of 2 and 3 bedrooms, I guess 25 there, so. The numbers are starting to add
Yeah,
up.
right, so that's right. And there's something like $500,000
Yeah,
construction in there
yeah.
as well that I was.
But anyway,
scratching my
it's-
head
it's-
on.
we're getting
We
in the
can
weeds,
ask,
so-
and actually, we're gonna be back here on Wednesday night in front of the school committee.
Well, that would be a
So
good
if
question
you
to ask them.
give me your question, I heard, so,
I'll
Well,
send it to you.
okay, perfect.
Yeah,
We'll make
I
sure to
think-
have that.
I think that bus cost is probably 2,000, 40,000 is an old number too.
So just to explain what we have on the left, so that was what we came in with our RFP. We proposed, or we estimated 47 to 67 children, and we used the cost per child from the 2018.
Okay,
Yeah,
So that gave you the cost, depending on the number of children, of 200,000 to 280. After the RFP, when we were designated, we then went back and met with the superintendent. The children increased because of the additional 3-bedroom units, but those costs, the additional bus route and teacher and special education, were discussed with the superintendent. So those aren't they're now part of our analysis, but those
Okay,
were
I don't-
generated.
I don't think he had the detail
No, he
to
probably
what
didn't.
that 42.
Yeah, he
Right,
didn't.
right.
So
That's
and this updated unit mix number also includes additional costs, the basic costs that we assumed from the 2018. So. Okay,
When you do get the fiscal analysis, a lot of this is spelled out in detail.
Yeah.
When you get the fiscal analysis, a lot of this is spelled out in pretty good detail.
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah, you did. So there'll be, I think, a final iteration around the road costs.
Okay,
And then I
Yeah.
suppose anything that we learn at the school committee meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah. I have the latest, I think.
Okay.
I haven't received the towns yet, but
you have the May 16th.
the May 16th one.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Todd,
Yeah, right here.
you're presenting to the school committee?
We will all be with the school committee on Wednesday night.
As will Mark Fugere, who did the fiscal analysis.
Good.
Okay, the historic strategy is to pursue historic tax credits. This means that our proposed design will be reviewed and reviewed from the moment we submit our plans until we are done construction. This is a process we're extremely familiar with. We, again, submitted an initial part 1. The proposal for using historic tax credits is a 3-part strategy. You submit a part 1 to confirm the plans are, or the buildings are in fact historic. Part 2 details your proposed rehabilitation of them in detail, from the lintels to kind of how the roof line looks. And then the part 3 happens once you're done construction, you have to verify that you actually did in fact build what you said you would. So we submitted our part 1 application to Mass Historic in April. They asked us they thought it would be more advantageous for us to submit them as individual buildings. So instead of 1 application, we now have 27, which was fun. And we also, they took that application and sent it to the National Park Service for the federal tax credits. We will be I'm sorry, did we meet with the Historic Commission?
Yes, we met with the Historic Commission and the Historic District
yes,
Commission
yes.
last Thursday.
You gotta be meetings.
I know,
There were a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, there was, yeah, that was
Yeah.
funny.
We'll see them again tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we met with all of them.
Yes.
Yes, and then, yeah, they were pretty excited. So are we. So that was good. And then if there are any works that need an archaeological dig, we're very familiar with those. So we may have to engage in one if.
So given your experience, given your enthusiasm, and given the reading you've had, it seemed to me pretty safe to say that this meets the criteria.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So is there any risk for the historic tax credits?
The only real challenge with the federal historic tax credit, you're allowed up to 20% of the cost of the rehabilitation to get that in tax credit. The Massachusetts historic tax credit is given out, doled out by the Massachusetts Historical Commission in awards. So you have to apply every quarter or every 4 months for an award. So the risk, and we do this all the time, is that you don't get enough awards. So you just keep applying. But because we started so early, we're hopeful that we'll be successful in getting the awards from the Mass Historical Commission. And then because it's such an important project to the town and the state.
Is there a proportionate ratio? I mean, the state, the federal do 20% up,
Yes.
and they do 2%.
Well, we're allowed up to 20%, so we
No,
keep,
but I mean, relatively
Oh.
speaking, what does the federal contribute relative to the state? Or
well, in the federal, you're allowed the full 20%. In the state, I mean,
I think you go up to 40% of the state.
Is it one
You
time?
never get it.
no, you can apply. So,
It's
you
not a
know,
matter of if, it's a matter of when, because you keep submitting until you get to the amount that you need.
to make the
Yeah.
And what
project
we've
work.
done in other projects is that we will forward equity to get the project completed with the idea of being when these tax credits come in.
Understood.
So we anticipate probably 8 to 10 to 12 rounds of submission. So that's 3 a year. Knock on wood, if our kind of,
Until you meet the criteria, until you meet the threshold, and then it's over. You don't, it's not on.
or, yeah, until they say, you know, we're done giving you the award. So
But
we,
I believe CAM has already secured. state
CAM
tax
has secured for
that-
their,
that
yeah, for
application.
their project. They've already secured. Okay. Legal and title, again, we're finalizing our LDA with the town. I think we're good with the town on any questions we had regarding title. So I think those are really the two main kind of legal obligations we had in the due diligence period. And then permitting, we are meeting, I can't remember when this meeting, tomorrow night, with all of the land use boards of the town to talk through the different permits that we will need. We've reviewed this with our permitting attorney and our permitting consultant, and all of those groups will be at the town tomorrow night. So we were, there's just a couple nuances trying to figure out what's the difference between the Office of Water and Sewer Board and the Water and Sewer Department. So just kind of those little discrepancies we're gonna work through, but these seem all pretty straightforward permits that we take on when we do a project of this scale. And then the project schedule, as we walked through earlier.
So the back to the gun range. It's not likely the gun range issue is gonna be resolved by June 21st.
No, but I don't think anyone ever expected that. to be-
No, well, maybe people, I don't know who, the voters, you don't know what the voters expect, right? So how do you expect to articulate that issue? When it's been characterized as the issue, right, of all the knowns, right? I mean, there are unknowns that
Sure.
are unknown, as the
Sure.
saying goes.
Sure.
This is the known, that's the, so it's not gonna be resolved.
Sure.
So it's gonna be the elephant in the corner.
So what we have done to get ourselves comfortable with this is in our RFP response, we had a sound study to confirm that there were in fact noises from the gun range and that they exceeded kind of background noise levels. What we did after the designation is we went back to our sound consultant and talked to them about showing us potential ways to mitigate the gun range. And they looked at different enclosures. So they basically told us, enclosing the gun range in a certain type of structure could mitigate the gun range to the site and beyond. Showed us, they modeled actually how an enclosure would impact the sound, and basically taking in the background noises of the site. There are noises out there. There's birds, there's a train, things you normally wouldn't expect, but and they model that for us to show that you could in fact mitigate the noise if you enclose the gun range. We then had conversations. We then went to find out who owned the gun range, and we are running title on the gun range to determine which ownership entity of the state owns the gun range. We then looked at if you needed to build a building on the gun range site to enclose that, could you in fact build a building? So we've gone through that process. So basically all of the signs have showed us that it is possible to enclose the gun range. That got us comfortable with that. And now it's a conversation of having conversations with the state, which we've started having with the help of Mass Development. So there seems to be a path that we can take, which is, from our perspective, as positive of a understanding as we're going to get at this point in time. And
I would
all
think-
parties seem to
I mean,
be.
the state seems to have an interest in helping solve this problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know, but so this is very helpful though.
Yeah.
When you hear this level of diligence. that
Yeah.
they're doing, and and it's just, if it's a timing issue, then, and you can explain what you've just kind of gone through, saying, it's not like there's a gun. I mean, it's important, I think, in a town meeting setting that we don't just say, there's a gun issue and we
Yeah.
hope to be able to resolve it. You're
Right.
way down a road on this.
Right.
And here are the pieces that aren't there, right? You talked about Mass Development, you find out who owned it, you talk, it's obviously, speaks very well to what we're doing. I presume costs and who pays for it, is that a question that's open to too?
This could be
It
the
always
four,
comes down to
this could be
that.
the Four Seasons of gun range.
So the mitigation would all have to take place at the site of the gun range.
Correct.
Not at the state hospital.
No,
not-
right.
And the Centec is not saying that. So the issue is for the external, the outside space of the development, not so much the residences in the bedrooms and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, right now, so we will have, our issue wasn't, well, first and foremost was if someone steps out of their home and is walking down the street, do they want to hear this? And to my point earlier, of we build developments that we would live in, and, we would not. And we understand we're not anti-gun, we are very in favor of the police but we just think coming into this scenario and having been through experiences where we've walked investors and lenders onto sites that had quirky problems, that this could raise red flags. So if
It's never
it's
good when you're walking your investor around and suddenly they die.
Well, I think maybe one thought I have is we would all be better off talking about this as a noise issue. Because I've had people say to me, well, does Trinity know that, you can hunt pheasant in November at the DCR? And it's not a anti-gun, anti-hunting.
No,
Right.
it's-
But I think
amendment
that's a fair
issue.
point, and I
It's a
think it's, because
acoustical
that's
problem.
particularly in today, and from my perspective, being able to articulate what you articulated here, so that you're just not saying, because sometimes it came across to me, hearing about it, saying, well, there's a gun issue down there, someone better fix it. You're working on
Yeah.
fixing it,
Yeah.
right? And there is a solution, and these are the steps that have been taken, and I just think taking that into the,
Sure.
making that known to people is, I think. helpful.
There were also a lot of very confusing comments at the last information session, where I didn't really know where town people were getting at, but it was almost like they were trying to preserve the gun, like they were saying how it wasn't a big deal. But we were like, well, what are you saying?
Yeah, one of the,
And I think some
one of the
people-
residents who lives around
Yeah.
adjacent to
They were
the
trying to
hospital
preserve the
said, "Oh,
noise."
we've had this
Yeah,
noise
they're like,
forever,
"Oh, we
you
hear it
know."
all the time. and it doesn't
But
bother
what
us."
is your point, right?
Yeah,
You're not building, so, and I think there was some confusion. I think a few folks thought that someone was trying to shut down a gun club. So I think you need to be really clear
Yeah, that's on the other
exactly
side of
what
town.
it is. Yeah, that's another.
That's the one that.
That's the one that is right.
Right. So I think right off the
Say-
bat, you need to say it's a state-owned
Right.
gun range for the police. We're not trying to shut down.
Yeah,
the local
private club.
Trying to
private club.
minimize the noise.
When you say mitigate, are you saying it's 50% quieter? or
I
what
know,
does
we
mitigate
like
mean?
it so that you don't hear it
You don't hear it at all?
Yeah.
at
But
all.
if you go
So,
back,
wow.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Oh, wow.
mean to
So
interrupt.
it's gotta be some type of enclosure.
Wow.
But if you go back to your sound contours, I mean, as somebody that works in commercial real estate, 65 decibels is
Right.
kind of the standard number, and there are areas, if you can find that map, where, in
Where is it on the map?
And
purple,
I think we should just note here,
As you go
this,
north on
these are from the
27, it's on the
RFP,
left.
this is the
Yeah.
sound study from the
So it's across
RFP.
between
The
27 and
mitigation
Charles River.
levels that we got to were down to 40 decibels.
Yeah.
So this isn't exactly accurate if you're looking at the decibel levels, happy to provide the different
Yeah.
scenarios.
The general idea, and that was one
Right.
earlier, is
No,
that
not from here.
lenders and investors consider it to be a nuisance, generally speaking, at 65 decibels above, whether it's a train or a runway or something like this. So you don't have to get to zero, I would submit, but you want to make it so that people
Sure.
It's-
Don't jump.
It's seasonal too. I mean, I don't know enough about this, but is it used all year round, even in the winter up there by the state? And is it?
Well, I know the one behind our neighborhood is
It's-
20.
Well, I mean, same with me.
Well, this one is-
24/7.
Yeah.
It's used quite
all the
often,
time.
actually. You'd be surprised how
Okay.
often, because it's a statewide training facility.
Understood.
Yeah,
So it's not just Medfield police, it's like.
Right.
But it's-
But so far the state has been amicable to.
they really
solutions.
have.
Okay.
So we feel that, we see a path or a potential path forward. So we're comfortable at this point in time.
I think what we've learned, if I could just add, is the Medfield police might use it 4 times a year. And it's a lot of other, police, municipal police, it's not the state police force, it's police
Yeah.
academies
Yeah.
and other towns. And it's totally open air right now. So if you were to go down there, it's just people shooting into a bank.
Yeah.
So, and they have some, caliber
Pretty heavy
weapons.
weapons.
and it's- Yeah, because it's, so, it seems like there would be room for improvement.
Okay, so that's a good, we'll kind of walk through the steps we've taken and
Yeah.
provide that information.
But you definitely, it's not an open issue.
Oh, no, we know a lot
Right,
now
yeah,
about
it's-
gun range.
More than you ever wanted to know.
Yeah, it's kind
Want to
of,
make
This
sure
would be
that
a gun range project with 334 units.
Yeah, right. It sounds like that.
yeah.
3 of our members are remote. I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity to ask any questions on the due diligence. Jill, Sharon, Amanda, I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions.
I'm all good.
Thanks, Sharon. Jill, Amanda?
Thank you. I don't have any other questions at this time.
So I think that takes us through our presentation. this evening. We want to get you that LDA. It would make us very happy to get it to you, so.
When
That's our
are we
goal.
meeting Monday?
Duly noted.
Yeah, we're meeting, we also have two members of the Development Committee here, Todd and Johnny Martinez are here. So, you know, can give them an opportunity to, you know, to chat with us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
You want us to stay?
it's up to you. We could go to the national graph and finish the LDA.
Oh, yeah. Love that. That's a great idea.
You gotta use the slides on you also.
Did you load the?
They're there. I can pull them up.
That's probably a good idea. No, I'm sure, yeah, public meeting. So, you folks are okay.
Whatever you, yeah, that's fine.
So really what I did, and I certainly not planning to go through all the slides, but you know, we've had some conversations. I know we had many members of the warrant committee, either, you know, in person or listening remotely to the April 6th session. And then there were two sessions with Trinity on the 18th. And I saw most, if not all of you guys there, so I didn't want to be rehashing anything, but, and we know we have a lot of questions to answer, you know, so that you can fulfill your obligations, so, yeah, one of the things that had come up in prior conversations was about our process with the development committee, so I don't know if you want to talk further about that tonight. I think there's been some sense of, you know, why does the development committee think this is a good idea for the town? We can talk about that. You know, I know we've been at this for almost an hour and a half. I think you have a couple other things on your agenda.
Do you have a sense of how many people are tied into the Brandy Herbs?
We need Sarah to tell us the answer to that.
For some reason, the number, I saw a number, but I don't wanna misquote it.
Yeah.
In a range. I mean, is, you know, the reason I'm asking is, you know, this is, you know, continually being updated. And it's really addressing each one of the issues. And when you're talking about what do you want to talk about after that, I'd be very happy to have you to walk through this report because it's so up to date. And I'm just hoping that people are reading it.
No, I think, yeah, we share that concern. People are busy and there's a lot of information, you know, so it's been 8 years of counting, so there's a lot of information.
Yeah,
that's
but I
been
mean, this particular document that Brandy is putting out is just, it's been timely, it reflects changes as it is, and
I mean, maybe after you do this, or as you go through, if you see an opportunity, I'm interested in the second article for the zoning change.
Okay.
And sort of the details around that and why.
Maybe we should just talk about that first.
Okay.
So when the zoning was changed in 2019 by town meeting vote and then enacted, it was the Northfield area subzone was drawn in a way that it assumed, because the master plan assumed that building 13, which is the building in the back, was going to be demolished.
Okay.
And so
So it's
building
not, it
13.
was not gonna be reused.
Correct. So building 13 is in the Northfield and the new zoning basically said you can't build in the Northfield. So, you know, then we went out to RFP.
So the old, or the zoning that passed in 2018 assumed that building would get demolished and nothing would get built there.
Correct.
Okay.
And then we received a proposal that said building 13 is great and can be saved and should be part of the project.
Yeah.
And so I think the planning board, and maybe Sarah Rose identified that there's a technical correction that needs to be made by the town in order for building 13 for multifamily building to exist in the north.
Is that the building with the fences, the furthest one back, with the
Farthest
fence
one
around
back,
it, where
yes.
they have the,
Yes,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
there's like a basketball court, I think. you know.
Well,
So the idea, I think, and then we're having a hearing tonight, would be to push the core campus subzone so that it's on the other side of that last existing building, so that it multifamily would be.
And
allowed.
and what would that corner, the northwest corner look like? Would that get extended across?
So that I think is part of what they're discussing tonight, and I think the town has clarified that it's important to have access. The roads will be public, so right now, if you go up that road that's on the west slope,
Yeah,
it ends before you get to the north field.
Mhm.
So I think the thinking is as part of the zoning discussion. Or maybe it's, part of the final description in the LDA, what actually gets transferred, that needs to be addressed so that there's public access at all times to the north field, on both sides. And there already would be.
so that little corner, they're trying to decide what to do, like right where that laundry parcel was and where they were mediating it, and then where the building with the mural on it. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
of course. So that building's coming down.
That's coming down.
The proposal. But yes.
In the 2018 master plan, that was a very valuable, they put a pretty valuable, price on that particular spot.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's largely the laundry parcel, which hasn't
Yeah.
transferred yet, but I think there is agreement that that corner needs to be sort of. It needs to. Any kind of transfer needs to be thoughtful about sort of how that works with public access.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So, but the warrant was published
Yes. it's supposed to
today,
say.
and I think that article, that's part of the.
I saw a draft that the selectmen had today, but it wasn't very specific about, the article itself. It's kind of just,
So we will have several quotes at our next meeting.
Okay.
She can help,
Okay.
delve into more detail and answer our question. And in the lead up to that, I'll get any information that is available, distributed.
So, but I think fundamentally, this wasn't, a change or a kind of change in the proposal by Trinity. It was more realization by the
That's what
town
I
that
was
the way
trying to
the
understand.
subzone was created, it needed to be cleaned up in order to.
and to be responsive
that
to the
building.
original proposal, which was to utilize that building 13.
Right.
I realized there was a problem. with
Building
it.
13 has always been in Trinity's proposal,
Yes, okay,
so without it coming out of the north field for zoning purposes, you couldn't have.
Yeah,
a
okay.
building.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be up to somebody, Sarah or whoever, to articulate that clearly, because the north field has always been viewed as being the field. And I think that it is, at least from my perspective, so, and that, it wasn't like, oh, that's a building in the north field that we don't, I think. So, but how that comes through, and of course, the other problem always is, oh, well, here they go again, so I think it's important to be able to marshal the forces, so you say, well, this has always been thought to be, and now as we go through and did our due diligence, we come to find that, in fact, this building, which has always been in the plan of the development, is in fact not in the proper zone, so.
Right, it's a technical correction.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Bob, just make sure that, because people could get confused.
Well, yeah,
And
and
what
if
you got
somebody
two
wants,
articles and like, what's the
as we all
second
know, if
article?
somebody wants to, they can make a big deal out of something that's not a big deal, so let's try not to make it a big deal.
Technical correction.
Technical correction.
Just like your point on, noise abatement versus weapons.
We're getting closer to a congressional committee.
Would you like a drink of water?
If you could go through some of the process.
Okay, so should we start with the development committee, or do we want to go back to, there was obviously the master plan. I think you guys are, I know you guys are all
I
very
know
familiar
we're
with that.
quite well educated on them, but.
So, but maybe I'll
Like the
actually,
high points.
maybe I'll start here, actually. So, after the town, if you go back and you watch that town meeting in 2014 to buy it, it was very clearly to control the development, not so that it would never be developed, but to control the development, but it wouldn't be developed by the state.
and result in a project that the town didn't want. So the master planning committee did, 4 years of work, won national awards for public participation, and as part of that, did a community survey that had over 3,000 responses, and these were kind of the big themes: preserve beauty and openness, keep the historic buildings and landscape, maintain the green, reuse the chapel for cultural and art center, and provide for recreation. And in the master plan that was issued in August of 2018, there were a number of different scenarios, but the so-called preferred scenario called for housing and really capped it at 334 housing units as a max. So when we started with the development committee, and Johnny and I were our original members of the development committee going back to I think it was September of 2018. So we were tasked by the selectmen as a committee to go out and people that work in commercial real estate who weren't involved in the master plan. So people coming into it new, go out into the development world and see if this master plan has any sort of possibility of getting done. So we started with a request for information, which was basically a questionnaire. It went out to about 30 developers. We got some pretty high quality responses. We interviewed 5 developers, including Trinity and including Pulte, and just talked about whether this project was realistic and kind of strengths and weaknesses of the vision and the master plan. The main concern that came out of that was not whether you could do a project with a historic rehab, but whether or not sort of how a zoning change would fit in. If you had to also change the zoning as part of a town meeting, is that going to be a detriment to receiving proposals of developers looking at it and saying, okay, this is a pretty big lift. We're gonna have to spend a lot of money to win the bid and due diligence, and if I don't know, just creates too much uncertainty. So, we went forward with the article in 2019, the zoning vote to basically change it to zoning that was in accordance with the strategic plan, and it passed by the required 2/3 vote.
14 votes, right?
Yeah, about 70%. Is how I look at it, actually. So yeah, it felt like a speaker, but it was about 70% of the people that were there voted yes. So then, we were authorized to move forward with an RFP, and we took our cues from the master plan, but we didn't require, which we would say it wasn't a blueprint. We wanted developers to know that this was the vision that the town saw for the campus, but that if it was not realistic in certain ways, or if it didn't make sense, or they had something better, then we wanted to receive proposals, reflecting what they thought was achievable and made sense, would be sustainable over a long period of time. So this was all under the 30B rules in Massachusetts. If you're going to dispose of public property, there's a very prescribed process. So we hired technical assistants, we hired attorney as a committee, in addition to Mark Sorrell representing the town. We're working with a firm called Mead, Talbot, Costa, and we went through multiple rounds of public comment, which actually it was not a required part of the process, but I think we all felt, and the selectmen felt, it was advisable for a project like this to allow people to comment on the RFP and to take those comments into consideration. So we eventually issued the RFP in April of 2021. The main categories you see here: community impact, consistency with the town's disposition intent, which is basically, preserve the values of the town, limit the impact, fiscal impact on the town, but also have a project that was viable for developers. And then we also had criteria around the development team and compliance with design guidelines and zoning. And the 2019 zoning change, we felt we didn't really want to have to go back to the town and say, okay, now this has to be zoned a completely different way. So we had some requirements from the state under the 2014 LDA, how we would distribute the marketing plan. We went out to about 35 targets. Some of those, let's say 2/3 of those are development firms, and the third were architects, engineers, people that are pretty tied into development in Eastern Massachusetts. We advertised at the Central Register and the Medfield Press as required, and then the town had its own list of people who had expressed interest over the years. And this is probably not the final total of the number of times the RFP was downloaded from the town's website, but there was a lot of interest that came in kind of, over the transom and for people who've been paying attention for many years. So we had some opportunity, formal process if developers had questions to submit written questions. The RFP was amended 3 times to respond to questions and to adjust deadlines. At one point, we did a site walk up at the property and we had representatives of 10 groups, 10 developers up there with some of their advisors, and we felt like we were receiving pretty good interest. But then ultimately, when August rolled around, we had a deadline. We just had 2 proposals, one from Trinity and one from Pulte. The Trinity proposal capped the units at the number of units in the master plan. Pulte had actually a couple of variations in their proposal, but the 2 that dealt with the whole campus called for a much larger total. One version was 602 housing units and the other was 702. And I would say, we didn't get the kind of engagement that you're seeing tonight, for example, from Trinity with Pulte. They, excellent firm, obviously, very capable. Not a lot of details submitted in terms of what's the impact on the town. There might have been a number that they estimated, but there was no way to really evaluate it. So I think from a committee point of view, it was hard to evaluate it, and you didn't want to deviate from the 30B rules and be collecting information post deadline that was really supposed to be part of the bid. So, we did our interviews, had some interesting conversations with Pulte, but in the end, the committee felt unanimously that Trinity's proposal was more reflective of what we were trying to do as a committee and what the town had said it wanted for the campus. We did do some post calling around, people that we thought would bid that didn't bid, and asked them why they didn't bid, and there was a real mix of reasons. We heard it's a very complicated project, requires and teaming, some developers said, and you could line up JV partner, and it was just a big project for them. They decided to pass. We had a couple of people tell us they knew there was a lot of interest in the project and they didn't think they could win. So they decided in the end not to bid. We had developers tell us they mostly do new construction, that if the mix was 2/3 new construction, 1/3 historic preservation, Avalon Bay, for example. We've done some other state hospital projects that they felt it was a better fit for them. And then we had other developers tell us, there's a bylaw in Medfield that requires 25% affordable housing, and they would either rather do 100% affordable housing, use low-income housing tax credits, and do a project like the park, for example. Or other developers said, that's really, if there's no subsidy and the town's not providing funds towards affordable housing, we're really a market rate developer, and that's kind of we want to stick to that.
Can I ask a question? Did you? Is there a direct competitor that parallels to what you do?
Yeah, we've got lots of them, too many.
Yeah, of course, there's always too many from that perspective, but I mean, in terms
frankly,
of.
we were surprised. I mean, there are a lot of good developers out there that, can manage most of this. I think what's different about us and them is there's a lot of moving parts here, and we always kind of joke that people work at Trinity because they like to work on a complicated project. And
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised, but then again, you have folks that they only want to do 100% affordable, and then you have other folks. I mean, we've established a niche where we can do mixed income. We've been successful with that.
And historical credit.
Oh, yeah.
Competitors, so that's the.
Oh, yeah. There are some that are probably right up there with us, and maybe some that have actually done more than us, or maybe giving them too much credit. But I think that there's a number of capable people. I don't think, again, when you think of 27 buildings, that's kind of a conversation starter for a lot of people. But this is exactly the kind of project that we take on. Historically, it's the one that no one else either has the courage to do or the ability to do it. And we've developed quite a niche business taking those kind of things.
Thank you. Thanks.
So just to maybe, kind of wrap up that part of it, when we did our evaluations, August 2nd was the bid deadline. So we spent from August 2nd to the very end of October evaluating proposals. We did interviews with the developers, which were public interviews. We allowed public comment on the proposals. The proposals had all been posted to the town's website. We did a series of questions, maybe asked too many questions of the developers as part of that process. But overall, it felt like it was very helpful to us as a committee in understanding sort of how much work had been done ahead of time by the developer and really thinking about this project and how they might go about it versus something that might be more of a kind of packaged RFP response. We also worked hard to incorporate the folks in the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission in our process, as well as the Cultural Alliance, given the nature of the Art Center, what had already been, the lease had already been entered by the town. And we also worked with the Medfield Energy Committee, who's expressed a lot of interest in this project and, trying to get to net zero for the town, kind of longer term goals. This is a big project. How does this project further those goals rather than become an impediment? So that all culminated with a vote at the committee level at the end of October to choose Trinity as the most advantageous, which is sort of the 30B language. And the selectmen voted on it in early November to proceed with Trinity as the most advantageous and move to the PDA. So I think you're pretty caught up from there in terms of the due diligence process that Abby and Amanda talked about earlier. Just trying to get to the LDA, right, which we know is very important. But I think, covered a lot earlier about kind of the nature of the due diligence that's being done. I think the ones that I would highlight as sort of the hot button issues that we're seeing and that we're particularly focused on is this. A lot of concern has been expressed in the public meetings about water capacity. And we had actually done a study before we went to RFP. The development committee did a study with PAR, and then that was reviewed, I think actually jointly commissioned with the water and sewer department with environmental partners to evaluate that, because I think, to come up even earlier, maybe at the master plan, but certainly in our early development committee meetings about, was that going to be a showstopper? And so the two studies that the town had done at that time indicated that there was sufficient capacity. Trinity now has their own study that was peer reviewed by environmental partners. So now we've had 4 studies by 3 different firms since 2019, and they all indicate sufficient capacity. So I don't know, because I think people, right now you can only hand water your lawn. I think there's sort of people are trying to understand what the connection is between something like that and a development like that. And I think, we're going to be meeting with the water and sewer department tomorrow, and I think we need to talk further about this. And so people have good information about what's going on with water in town. We're looking at the impact on schools. We've had a lot of discussion around that tonight. We have a meeting Wednesday night with the school committee. We're excited about that. Mark Fougere will be there, the fiscal impact consultant that Trinity engaged. And, when we spoke with him early on, it was gratifying, as Abby mentioned, that they did seem to be broad agreement with the superintendent on these numbers, and Mark had made the comment to me that this was his 3rd project in Medfield. So I think even the Aura project, and I'm not sure what the other one was, but he has relationships with people in town, various departments, and I think he's been able to get good information, or maybe coming in with fairly realistic numbers, so there's not this big kind of gulf to be negotiated. So I don't know if there's other issues that you guys would add to that list.
Last point on the traffic, I was looking at my question. I had one I didn't ask earlier. So in the beta study, they mentioned that there was they mentioned that there were, there's this 25% of the daily traffic that impacts major, what I call major intersections in town, so like,
Wall Street.
yeah, so not the ones that they did this detailed study around, but these are like Route 109 and North Street, 27 at West Street, and Route 27 at 109. So they said from the possible development, there was 25% traffic that was going to impact those studies, and they said they recommended a financial contribution to future improvements of those intersections. So I just point that out in case you haven't seen that one. but I know
It's come up,
Just
yeah.
came up, okay. And
Todd, I think it's time to go.
Send bills.
Time to go.
I thought you said send a bill.
And then there were, you know, and then the other ones that they did study in detail, you know, I guess they rated as an F. But those, everybody knows about, you know, the impact of those are good, right?
Yeah, they're already bad.
They're already bad, yeah, and they're just gonna get worse, so that's, we've already talked about the mitigation that's gonna happen there, but, okay. I just wanna make sure you knew about that, that's all.
Yes, no, thank you.
Well, you know, going through this, we both later. But a couple of thoughts that I have. I always talk, so it's, you know, you talk about water capacity, you know, you're addressing that in traffic. You know, the impact on schools has always been a big issue, right? And you addressed that. You know, we just went through some very challenging issues and, you know, schools. And town character and open space were huge issues and environmental as well. So I think you're addressing those. But I think that to me, you know, the way that you've addressed this with the historical view and with the campus and maintaining the buildings as they are, I think it's, you know, and being, you know, consistent with the town's vision, as you said, is a huge deal. You know, Jim, when you were talking earlier in your presentation, you know, that it's a complex, this is, you know, project. And as you know, showing your you know, as you make your presentations, I get more confidence with your experience and your ability to address it. And I think it's really important to, and I've raised this with Todd a number of times, you know what you're getting yourself into with this environmental piece. And, you know, the number of 20 million you addressed in the past, you've got that in your number, your eyes wide open. I think that's really important because when we say, what's the purchase price? The purchase price is what we get and what we don't have to keep. You know, so if you're getting 2 million and you're not keeping 20 million, that's a huge question, you know, because we ultimately, when we talk next week, it's gonna be, what do we retain? If not this, then what?
Well,
You know?
right, and that's the question that comes up. So what if the vote fails at town meeting? What does that mean for the community? What kind of liabilities are we stuck with? What are the costs? You know, what then?
Right, well, so I think, you know, various numbers have been put out there in the past. I think we were interested to hear sort of what Trinity was thinking, because it would be a current number. A lot of the information we had was pre-COVID and construction cost run up. And my understanding, just extrapolating on the 4 buildings, it's about 20 million. So now, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being more than that by the time, you know, you're able to do the job, but that's, you know, if you read.
Represents what?
To remediate the buildings.
So you have to remediate them before you, if you were to ever want to demolish them.
So you just want to make
Right, let's just make it a big matter.
big dog.
So when
20
folks
million
bring up
dollars.
the concept of, well, that land is worth a lot more than $20 million, sure, is it that the cost of 600, 700 homes, 800, 1,000, you know, are you talking about increasing the population by 12, 20%, or, you
I think
know,
that's where the
volume,
Well, I
the
think
the value.
there's a couple of ones. First of all, the state didn't just give us the land.
Right.
So they knew what the liability was too.
Yeah.
So we were taking that off their hands We were assuming that, so when we got it. To your other point, I think is that if they're at least, that's why I asked the question, yeah, there's other companies who can do this, and if they're the same companies, they're gonna come up with the same proposal, or you're gonna come up with 745 units, up, tear it down and put this up. And that's gonna change everything significantly.
Yeah.
And when you say, if you say there's 800 people that are gonna come out of 344 of these kind of units, you put 750 units up there, of buildings and houses, you're gonna have a 10 to 15% increase in the size of the town.
With a lot of more
all the
2,
costs that
3,
go
4
through.
bedroom homes.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
what I'm saying,
right,
that's,
right.
and that changes the
Yeah,
schools.
then you're
Then you're
building,
not- yeah.
building new schools and.
You're
adding
talking a lot
capacity.
different, so I think that it's really important.
Plus, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, it's really important that as you, articulate the process that you've gone through. I think it's important to emphasize that, we didn't just get two, right? That Trinity is reflective, in addition to all the work they've done, and that speaks for itself, is that the alternative would be the same, or the 750, and the 750 is just not even an option for a town like Medfield to take on that kind of.
Yeah, and I think
change everything.
the other thing people have to realize is that, whatever that number is, 40 or 44 million that Pulte put out there. Half of that goes to the state. Doesn't all stay with Medfield because of the sharing arrangement, that has to occur. Correct. Which reminds me, Nick, is that calculation done? Have you done that? The calculation of the proceeds to the town?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, did you include it in there or no?
I did not include it in the
Okay.
slides, but yeah, but it's,
I just
some of the
wanted to- I
variables
would
are how
like
much
to
land
see
are you,
that.
and how much have you spent so far, so it changes a little bit here.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
I would also find it hard to believe that you could get a consensus at town meeting to say,
never-
hey, we're gonna tear down all these historic buildings and put up 1 million homes. I just,
Right.
if you thought this one was gonna be hard.
What, I agree.
Yeah.
You never, no one,
Never.
would never approve 750, or that would never pass 2/3 vote. But what happens in these situations, from our experience, or my experience in 4 or 5 years on the board, is it's a coalition of no's. It's not one no that you deal with. It's like, that I don't want this, I don't want anything to happen. It's gonna group with, I don't think we're getting enough money, group, which is added to the, hey, you know what, we can do better on this, and all of a sudden, it doesn't take long to get to 33%.
And I think that's a great point.
So you want to make sure you don't, you deal with those individual pieces together.
Yeah.
So that there's not a coalition.
And I would say, and I'm sure Johnny agrees, having been at this for almost 4 years. And the exposure there, I was getting calls from architects saying, do you know developers that might come in on this, are really interested in this project? So it was out there.
Mhm.
Would we have liked to have gotten more proposals? Yes, of course, but it wasn't for lack of, marketing of the opportunity. So, if this didn't pass, is there a reason to think if you went back out, you would get more proposals or better proposals? I don't really see it.
Right.
And I think what you might get is, well, Medfield doesn't really want to do this project. They just voted this Trinity proposal
Right.
down.
Well,
so why would
I
spend
think
my money on it?
that's a very practical
Yeah,
point
that's
there
right.
too, and Jim, you alluded to it, but I think it's, you've made a big investment here already.
Yeah.
So, and that's just reality, right? And if there was a company that was right behind you that thought, well, maybe we could do this. And the town comes in and says, we're not gonna do it. There is no, I don't think there would be an alternative, from my view, that, this is it, are we going a different direction?
I think it's also worth noting that water's gonna start penetrating the buildings, and pretty soon it's gonna be a foregone conclusion. It's gonna be.
I think the
Demolition
timing
by
is
his
right.
letter.
When you continue.
Well, and maybe I'll just jump ahead. I think, you're very familiar with, what would be sold at this point. And I guess, the way we look at it, Yeah, the town bought 127 acres in 2014, and it's a beautiful piece of land. It came with these 27 buildings, or maybe it's 29 buildings, the CAM buildings that have issues. They're known to be, it's just the vintage of the buildings. They always have these materials, so there's, there's a real benefit to the town, not just the cost savings, but actually having those buildings addressed while still retaining the open space and, the sledding hill and all of these other parts of the property that are not characterized by these buildings that need to be addressed. So yes, we paid $3.1 million for 127 acres, but we're selling 45, and we're selling the 45, potentially to somebody who really knows how to bring these buildings, not only up to code, but back to life, and kind of activate the campus in a way that would be, I think, very successful between the river and the open space and the art center. I think it would all be pretty exciting and successful. So this map just kind of overlays, we bought A and B in red. And what you see on the right there in the inset, that sort of jigsaw piece, what's in yellow there is what's proposed to be transferred. I know you guys have seen these maps before, so.
On that, I was gonna go back to that map.
You want to ask about the North Field, right? So this
Yes,
purple
so
rectangle.
that
is-
purple, that's building 13, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so is the zoning just associated with the purple box, or is it potentially taken to,
This shows the existing zoning. So
Okay.
exactly how the planning board might.
you don't
want to-
know how that's gonna come?
Their hearing is tonight,
Yeah,
so,
okay, all right.
but the building 13 is within that purple rectangle, along with, where you would put parking for people who live in building 13.
Okay.
So I'll just hit a few other quick things, just, overview of the Trinity proposal. I know you heard this earlier, but it's all but two of the buildings that they would be acquiring would be restored. So, and that's outside of that, you would have the CAM buildings. It's 334 apartments, 75% of the fair market. Everything is within the existing footprints of the buildings that are up there today. There's no new construction contemplated at this time. They have a consultant called New Ecology, who's very well known for sustainable housing. There are obviously limitations of what you can do with a historic rehab.
Are they doing any sort of standards, like LEED or well or anything like that? Is that pertain?
It's a little more complicated. We haven't gotten to that point yet
Okay.
about determining how we do it, given the historic nature of the property, but we will be.
Just a question, I'm not, just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question that, the Energy Committee's been, they're pretty eager, I think, to kind of get to the permitting questions about, could you do solar panels and things of that nature. So, the proposal also absorbs the infrastructure costs. I mean, you might look at kind of typical municipal infrastructure costs or something like this, and the strategic plan, it was estimated at about $26 million. That's a 2018 number. So that's aside from, the environmental remediation. So this all gets wrapped into the project. There's no cash outlay, there's no 2.5 override. The town is released from various liabilities it acquired from DCAM, buying the property in 2014.
My recollection of the zoning question was people were skeptical that we wouldn't incur big infrastructure costs.
But that's proved out not to be the case.
Exactly, but I mean, that's when we're saying,
Yeah.
the no votes are gonna come from those no votes, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so if you can address that issue, then it clears it up.
And Todd, all those environmental issues we assumed from DCAM are gonna go away with this new agreement. I thought, just checking.
So this is just the financial piece, that it's a $2 million purchase price. There's the $500,000 that Jim mentioned earlier to go towards costs that the town might incur, during construction management, things of that nature. And we've already been reimbursed $25,000 for costs of basically putting this out on the market. They are also making $1 million donation towards the historic rehab of the chapel and infirmary for the Cultural Arts Center. And they pledged to donate $250,000 in the future to CAM for programming once the Art Center is operating. So I think we've kind of talked about our review conclusions just informally, but the slide I wanted to get to was this one. If I go back, these are the criteria I read to you that I said the 3,000 survey responses indicated was important to the town, and we think this proposal meets all of those criteria. And then some. So we feel like Trinity took seriously what the town said we wanted in the RFP. Again, that RFP was out for public comment multiple times. The selectmen made multiple revisions. We got it to a point where it could be issued as representing what the town wanted, and we feel like we have a proposal now that does that. Okay, there. Another big slides. I don't think I want
any more questions or want to touch, make sure that everybody on the remote land has a chance. Anything from you folks on Zoom land? Jill, Amanda, Sharon?
I'm good. This has been great. Thank you for the presentation.
I'm good too.
Great. This has been really informative. Thank you.
Any more questions for Todd? For John?
Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we know we have more to do. I've got any questions.
Yeah, we had a Little League game right before this. Unfortunately, we lost. Not high, no, this is Little League. These are the little ones.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in the high school game. Do we know?
I don't. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Nice meeting you. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. So let's spend a few minutes just kind of strategizing what information we may want for our next meeting. If anybody has any ideas who we may want to invite to the next meeting to help provide some clarity on any issues.
I think we try to think, go back to my memory here. I think that I just would like to spend some time with the school people just to nail down this question of the extra school capacity that was assumed we needed back in 2018. We needed 2 new classrooms and $500,000 of module cost.
Yeah.
So I know that was 300 kids, so obviously we're not in that range anymore, but for the same token, we're kind of at capacity at that place already. So any additional kids are gonna have some kind of impact. And maybe they think they can deal with the size of this,
Yeah.
but I just think we ought to, just get them to say it's okay, rather than us assuming it.
So they'll be meeting with the school committee on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Probably, the discussion there, but you can invite Francesca or somebody else to report.
Maybe, have them just for a 20-minute update.
Yep.
With the nominate part of the department.
Yeah, we just want their blessing. That's
As part of the meeting next week. If we can have them just for a half-hour segment or a 20-minute segment, just to. That'd be good.
Yeah, because it's just one of those lingering questions that's out there that sort of, was in the 18 due diligence, and make sure. And the other thing I think is just, I guess Sarah's gonna be there, so she can deal with any traffic questions, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll work on getting those attendees lined up. In the interim, after you digest the meeting and information tonight, please forward any questions you may have, and I'll work on getting the answer to those for the next meeting.
I hope we get a quorum.
Yeah, that's my
Town meeting?
question. I guess is like, what's
mean,
I've attended some of these online sessions,
Yeah.
but what's the pulse out there? Is it like, do we have numbers of?
I mean, it's gonna
interviews?
be, like, my understanding is like Juneteenth is that Monday, that's a holiday.
And that's the last day of school,
And
is the next day.
last day of school, it's a half a day.
It's a half a day.
So
That's
the
first day of
previous
summer.
Friday,
It's the first day of summer.
they're gonna come in for half a day.
Has the select board voted on the reduced quorum number, or is that?
That'll be
on their
tomorrow
agenda?
night.
So they're considering a reduced quorum,
Oh, that's good.
which has
Oh,
been
that's good.
supported by the moderator, Scott, so.
Good.
It's a, a modest reduction, but one that
The
will help
modest is
sort of
like
guarantee that we will.
100 people.
150.
Does the select board take a position on this article?
Not yet.
Will they?
Yes, I believe since they're negotiating the LDA, they will be voting to
hope they
support it.
do.
I feel comfortable
I'm
speaking for
not
both of
gonna
us.
take my.
If not, it will be a surprise to me and then we'll regroup.
The reason I ask is, should we have some meeting with the
A
select? board?
joint meeting, that's a good question, yeah, I don't know, I mean, there's not much time, but.
They're meeting on the 14th.
They're meeting on the
I
14th.
second that. I think it would be great to hear from them as well.
In what information would you want from the select board? What questions do you have for them?
I just want to hear their voice.
Their pitching
It's
position.
similar to the school committee. I mean, they've gone through this. I think it's important that we look and view as one. That, they've been negotiating this and frankly, been negotiating this in executive session. So they've been through this whole process.
Sure.
And I think it's, particularly Gus, it's good he's on the board.
It would be great to hear from them just based on their negotiation points and kind of where they settled and why. That's my personal interest in it.
Thanks, Joe.
I mean, if we don't have I'm just trying to think out loud, if we don't have the LDA by next Monday, is that, and I mean, on Monday, Tuesday?
It's our meeting's on Monday,
Monday.
which does give us the
We're
opportunity.
gonna have to have a second meeting or another meeting, right?
Right, so I mean, the benefit of having on Monday, we could possibly, if we needed to schedule a meeting for Thursday, based on what we hear on Monday, we could.
Yeah.
And the LDA, how, is it this far apart or is it this far apart?
It's this part.
Okay.
Is it this big or is it this big?
Yeah, exactly.
It's always this one that's always this big though.
It's easy to start from here,
You're
till you
right.
get down to the end.
Well, I think I think one of the pieces on the LDA is clarity on what it is and what it isn't from the side of, it's the framework. But there's still an ongoing process, right? So I guess that's a question. I mean, when I say what I'm saying is, so it authorizes the select board to negotiate an LDA.
No, the LDA is
It'll be
what's been
negotiated.
negotiated.
It'll be negotiated.
This one,
Okay, so it's done, it's a done deal.
Yes.
Everything is in.
Yes.
the LDA will be agreed upon for town meeting to essentially accept.
This is
So-
a document.
Yeah.
So at the town meeting, they're gonna have to give the component, a Sesame Street version of the LDA.
Christine, I couldn't see your hands on how far apart.
They're almost touching. They're
Okay,
almost
thank you,
touching.
Jeremy.
You know how wide the table is?
As a lawyer, you know how long it takes to get that last.
It's that last part.
Sometimes.
There's gonna be
always the
multiple
financial
presentations. There'll have to be 2 or 3 presentations.
Oh, certainly.
Trinity will have one.
Somebody will have
Somebody
a
that
hospital
commanded
committee.
us.
Certainly.
This is gonna be a long meeting on the 21st.
That's why I was asking is how many, like,
Yeah.
do we have a sense of how many people have attended these sessions and how informed the general public is versus,
Well, the session, I know you went
It's
to
out
one
there.
and then we went to another one.
Mhm.
The
That was
one
online,
that Jeremy and I went to was pretty well attended.
Oh, good, okay.
And then there was another one that was pretty well
It's
attended.
very well attended in the senior center.
So,
Oh, good, okay.
Well, they were serving lunch, but I mean, it was still.
Yeah, they had food, which is always a good.
So what you're saying is I need a food truck for town meeting.
In the gym.
Especially on the last day of
Not
school.
outside, in the gym.
Dinner will be served.
Yeah.
That would be great. Or there's fast.
Well, it might not be a bad idea, that's something, that you know, have a sandwich and.
I have a question about the LDA. They referenced that the hurdles, or I guess the speed bumps that might arise are going to be specifically called out in the LDA. Does anyone know here, are those treated as contingencies or negotiated ways to address the hurdles, or do we know? I mean, I guess we'll see it. But
You'll see it.
No comment.
Okay.
All of the above.
That's a
Very
good question.
sneaky though, Amanda, I appreciate it.
But yeah, I think those are the issues, right?
yeah,
Without saying what the issues are, Christine, that's the
Yes, we'll be
that's the
addressing some
character
of
of
those.
those address.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious about that area. Okay.
And then theoretically, the LDA is if we're voting on that, people can, maybe an on the floor amendment to that kind of.
So you're not voting on the LDA.
Okay.
The LDA will have already been agreed to by the selectmen. What you're voting for is the authorization to
Okay.
allow the selectmen to
So
consider.
nobody can come up
Yeah.
with different wording and nobody can do like, nobody can say we
We see their
recommend.
faces.
Right, okay,
I mean,
who knows, but.
yeah,
But
I
in
see them
theory,
all
no.
in pajamas.
It's not showing up there. Trying to get you on the big screen, Amanda. You know,
Once the others went off video, I willingly followed suit.
I want to see the pumpkin on Sharon Catro's screen because it's at.
she may have sent me one.
I may have been sending pumpkins.
I'm sure there's a pumpkin in there somewhere now.
Jeremy's first meeting. and he
There's
blows it
11
down.
pumpkins.
The good news is the placeholder agenda items for the transfers, we don't have any. So we're gonna need to discuss those.
Oh, that's good.
Our agenda for tonight is done, other than our conversation.
Great.
Anything else people want to chat about? We good?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a roll call for those on Zoom. Sharon,
Aye.
Amanda,
I
Bill,
Aye.
thank you. We are adjourned.
Thanks, guys.